So I want you to imagine this. Imagine this isn't Sunday morning. We're Saturday, maybe about 3:30. You are here because a wedding is taking place in this room. So we've got, I don't know, are you bride side or groom side? I never know which side people are. You're bride side. We'll just say that. Doesn't really matter. Groom side over here. It's a little thinner on the groom side. That makes sense. There we go. That worked out well. So we got bride side. We got groom side. It's kind of like that moment. All the bridesmaids have walked in. They're standing up here on the stage. Everyone's around. And it's kind of like that big moment right beforehand when the bride is about to walk down the aisle. So everybody turns around. They look at the back door. Everybody turns around. They look at the back door. You're getting it. You're getting it. There we go. They turn around, they look at the back door, they're excited. No, you have to look at the back door. We're going to do that until someone walks in and just make them feel unbelievably. No, okay, there you go. We're not going to wait that long. Could you imagine being that person like walking into church? Well, I guess it's 30 minutes late at this point in time and everyone's staring at you. Like, whew, that would be something. So like, she walks in and then you do the thing that so many people do. As soon as you see the bride walk in, you look at the groom because you want to see how the groom responds to seeing his bride for the first time. So she walks in and everybody turns around and they look at the groom and he is standing up there like this. How you feeling? I can tell you what you're not thinking. You're not thinking, oh, they're gonna make it. Like, they're gonna be so happy. Like, now, like, if the bride's walking down and, like, with her dad and the father, or her father is like this, you'd be like, well, that makes sense. I understand that. Like, this is okay. But the groom, that's not okay. And this is what we understand. We understand intuitively that posture matters. That posture makes a difference. We know this physically. If you're here at the very beginning, you saw the wonderful interview with Derek and Dr. Bruce Brown as to how posture matters physically. Our posture makes a difference. I don't know if anyone has seen this. There's been a lot of research recently on the effects of sitting for a long time today. Has anyone seen like the infographic and stuff on sitting? Well, you need to look at it because like one of the things that it came out with the sitting stuff is like sitting for 8 hours a day is more hazardous to your health than eating a cheeseburger every single meal. It was like one of the things. And so I read that and I thought, I need to eat more cheeseburgers. Like, if those are the same, I absolutely need to take advantage of that. But like, we get that, like, and we understand that like posture, there's like different postures in different moments. Like, there's a right way to stand. There's a right way to sit. There's a right way to lift something. If you ever move something with me, right before we move something, I don't care if you find it's funny, I think it's funny. Right before we move something, I will always tell you to lift with your back, not with your legs. And someone's, okay. So, and we just get that. We get that posture matters physically. But here's the thing that we're going to talk about in these 2 weeks, is that posture matters relationally as well. That the postures that we take in our relationships are very significant. Now, some of this is subtle. Some of this we're not even aware of. Like, let me give you some small things. I read a book recently by a ex-FBI agent who studied people's body language. And the two most significant things he said that most of us are good at controlling the reactions on our faces. Now, some of us aren't. Who are my not? Yeah, there we go. Just like, what you see is what you get. There it is. He said, most of us are good at that. But we actually get we are less controlling of our emotional response as you move from your head to your feet. That the feet are a giveaway as to how someone is actually feeling. So the two things that I thought was fascinating that he said most of us are not aware of. He said, the first thing is if you're talking to someone and they're done having a conversation with you, if they want to move on, the first thing that they'll do is they'll move their feet. Now, they may keep facing you directly, but they'll move their feet outward to show they no longer want to be in that conversation. And what happened was the rest of us, while we're in the lobby from here on out, are going to stare at other people's feet. Okay, we're good. And then the other thing he said is he says that for people who cross their legs, we will naturally cross our legs, like leave our leg open. This is somewhat difficult for me to do, towards the person who we trust. Isn't that fascinating? was like, that's amazing. That like if you sit in a circle or something like that and you cross your leg, you will naturally close your leg off to the person who you trust less of the two people next to you. And you go, oh my goodness, I need to figure that out. Some of you had your spouse had their leg crossed right next to you, and you're like, oh no, like we're in trouble. We need to talk. And so there's some subtle things that we're unaware of, but there's also some purposeful things when it comes to our posture in relationships. That there are some things that we can specifically do that we understand either encourages a relationship or discourages a relationship. So if you come and I am sitting at my house, I will be sitting at my house very differently than I sit at work. If you come and see me in the office here at work, I will not be slouched as far down in my chair as I can be so that my head is barely touching the back of the chair with my legs up on my desk, because that's not how you sit at work. Now at home, that's how I sit. I stand differently when I talk to adults versus when I talk to children. And so when I talk to adults, I will stand like this. Now, it would be very awkward and uncomfortable if I went to have a conversation with you, and you're like, hello, Kevin. I said, hey, how you doing, buddy? Now, maybe for Harold, my favorite. But that is not typically how I stand, because that does not encourage a relationship. And so there are things that we can do that encourage and discourage relationships based upon the posture that we take. Now, I need everyone to participate in this, because there is a typical posture that we have for the majority of our relationships. And this is the posture right here. Could everyone do this? This is crowd participation morning, okay? We're going to do a lot of stuff. Yes, right here. This is the posture that we take. This lets you wave. This lets you high five. This is the, oh wow, you actually did that. That was great, thank you. This is the typical posture to take. Now you can go ahead and put your hands down. I will make an exception. If you're Danny, you don't take this posture, you take this posture, because it's a fist bump for everyone. But this is the posture that we take. And what this does is this postures us to have acquaintances. You can say hello to people. You can give a brief greeting. You can ask someone how their morning is and figure out about their weekend. But that's about it. And that's what I found is the majority of us, we posture ourselves to have acquaintances. Now, I've got nothing against acquaintances, but this is what I found in my life, is I could lose about 100 acquaintances and it really wouldn't affect my life at all. I could know 100 less people's names, and it really wouldn't make a difference in my day-to-day life, in my quality of life, and in the direction of my life. One of the most significant factors in terms of how this has shaped our society is social media. Social media has put us in a spot where we have more and more acquaintances and fewer close relationships. We know what people are doing, but we rarely know how people are doing and how we can help them in their future. And so this is what I want to propose today, is that for the majority of our relationships, we need to take a new posture. We need to move away from this posture, and we need to move towards something else. Now, if you're someone who likes to follow along, just to give you a quick heads up, we're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 12 this morning. And normally I reference for you the BCM Bibles and other stuff, but we're going to be a couple different spots. So this is what I would encourage you, even instead of that, is to go to bcnazarene.org/gatherings. And it has the several scriptures we're going to use that are right there. And it'll also have some key notes from scripture and some next steps that we're going to take, because we're going to talk about that a lot this morning. But throughout this, I want to show you a new posture that I think we should take. And in order to do that, I need to take you back on a trip to elementary school recess, okay? So some of you, you're not going back a long period of time. Others of you, you're like decades and decades. Okay, so we are back at elementary school recess. Now, my elementary school, we had 2 playgrounds, and I kind of want to figure out what everyone did, if you can take that trip back to elementary school recess. We had 2 playgrounds. There was a playground that had equipment, and the other playground was just a field. So there was one playground that we actually got to play on stuff, and then the other playground, we basically just made up games. So on the one playground with equipment, there were some people, there were like 3, maybe 4 main things to do. Some people did the swings the entire time? Who was a swings person? Go back to elementary school recess. There was more of you than that. Be proud. Swings people. Who was a swings person? Yes, there we go. What the swings people typically did in my elementary school is they got on that swing and they swung. That's a fun word. I don't know if that's a right word. They swanged. That's correct. I'm confident of it. The entire time, okay? So we had some swing people. Then there was like a step up in terms of bravery. Then there was the teeter-totter people. Who were the teeter-totter people? Who of you teeter-totter people, who was dumb enough to accidentally leave your feet under the teeter-totter and crush your ankles? I think it happens to everyone once. Happened to me once, like never again. And then at my elementary school playground, I think it's actually called the carousel, but it didn't have like the horses and stuff, so I don't usually call it a carousel. At our school, we called it the Red Wheel of Death. And what the Red Wheel of Death was, it was basically this thing that had bars that spun around over and over again, and kids would just hang on for dear life. And every once in a while, you get an adult who would come around, and they'd start spinning it. And like, I just had this, I know this didn't actually happen, but like I just had this picture in my head of these kids just like getting tossed left and right from the Red Wheel of Death. And it usually just went until someone like had that like plea, like you want to hang on for as long as you can, then someone would go, stop, I'm gonna fall, stop. And then we'd finally stop. So those were our three things. And then we had the other playground, which was the field. Now we had three main games on that one. Tag, who played tag? Some of you aren't participating well enough yet. Apparently your elementary school recess was just horrific. Detention, is that what it was? I'm sorry. Okay, so we played tag, sometimes freeze tag. Yeah, there we go, freeze tag. We also played pickle. Did anyone play pickle? I don't have the time to explain pickle. It's a baseball game. There we go, some pickle. But my favorite game, which I think has been banned in the majority of elementary schools, was Red Rover. Who played Red Rover? Oh, fantastic. This is what I need. I need 4 people who played Red Rover to come up here. And I'm completely serious on this. 4 people. Come on. Yes, there's 1. There's 2. There's 3. I need 1 more. Come on, come right up here. And 4, I need you guys to come. If you would stand in a line right about here. And you're not just going to be an illustration for Red Rover. We may actually play a little Red Rover. So the band, do we have the band? Yes, the band is coming up for Red Rover. Okay, you guys are in fantastic spots. We've got Dusty's microphone. I'm sure none of this stuff is expensive. We're good. That's fine. All right, so band, come on up. If you would take your Red Rover spots. And so you guys...
We're getting serious.
Oh my. We're not messing around. Okay, so would you go arm in arm as you do? And the band, if you would anger yourself just a little bit so the camera can still see you. I know you're not directly across. Okay. Oh, man, I'm in the middle. That's not where I want to be. All right. So we have our Red Rover teams. Now, if you don't remember this, this is how Red Rover would start. And then one of the teams would say,
Red Rover, send Dusty right over.
They'd usually have a conversation ahead of time. Leader, good job. And so Dusty would... Just to be clear, we're on stage. No, go ahead. Like, show them. Take your pick. I don't know. And there you go. Now you be stuck. You're with them. Go with them. Now, this is what I want to show you. So this is how Red Rover is played. And normally it would hinge upon, so we played it in 4th grade. There was always this one 4th grader, and I think every school had one, of a guy in 4th grade who had a mustache. And their team always won. Ours name was Brian. And then later on, I was a daycare teacher. And every day, I was a daycare teacher when I was in high school. I apologize, I'm still going to use you in a second. I know you're up here for a while. You're doing wonderful. I was a daycare teacher in high school for 1st and 2nd graders. And we played Red Rover every day at daycare. And I never lost. And I know you hear me say that and you think, oh, that's a funny joke. But I'm serious. I never lost Red Rover at daycare. But I noticed something really interesting. Okay, so if you guys would just keep your arms together, but spread apart just a little. So yeah, you gotta have a little bit of space so someone doesn't hit your torso. And this is what I noticed when teams played Red Rover. So if you would Red Rover Seth on over. And Seth, I'm gonna tell you what to do.
Red Rover over. Seth on over.
Well, you can do it better than that. All right, let's just go anyway for a second. Okay, so Seth, and you're going to go straight between Lester and Jen, and you're going to hold tight. And so Seth would run, and here's what would happen, is he would push. Now, you notice what happens, is the chain goes all the way back here. All right, Seth, you can step back. I like how you froze in position. Now, this is what everybody thought in Red Rover, is that you needed just to be two strong people right there in the moment. But as I watched my daycare kids, the chain would not always break where the person ran. The chain would break several people down because they didn't hold tight. All right, you guys can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. Would you give them a round of applause? Jen, take your shoes. Now, this is what I think, is while most of us posture ourselves like this in our relationships, I think the new posture we need to take is we need to be arm in arm. We need to have people who we can stand arm in arm with, and not just a person, because the chain doesn't always break at the person who you're standing next to. The key to a good Red Rover team was to have a strong chain several people down. And so that's what I want for you, is I want you to be postured arm in arm. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do you build your Red Rover team, if we could say it like that. How do you build your Red Rover team? Now, I know the initial response of most people will be, yeah, I have some of those people. Like I have people who I'm arm in arm with. I have people who are like standing with me. We're not just acquaintances. We're not just, hi, how was your morning? We're much deeper than that. We care for each other. We trust each other. But here's the thing, is it's not just like, do you have some of those people? I want to ask, and I know this is where it gets really awkward because it's relationships. I want to ask, do you have the right people? Like, are the right people in those positions in your life? Now, I'm not saying you should break up with your friends. I'm not saying, like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, you can't be on my Red Rover team anymore. Like, that'd be the most awkward conversation. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that those relationships affect you dramatically. And we know a couple different things about those relationships. First one is this, that you are happiest when your relationships are healthiest. Like, we know that, right? If you look back on your life, you would say, that's correct. I am happiest when my relationships are healthiest. Now, this actually goes a little further, and we need to be just really, really aware of these things. Unhealthy people do not function well in healthy relationships. Unhealthy people do not like being in healthy relationships because it's against of kind of their makeup of where they are in that moment. Now, I think they can get healthy, but unhealthy people do not like healthy relationships. And I've had this happen several times, that we are attracted to people who are similar to us. And sometimes I'll be talking to a husband or a wife about problems, and they will look at me and they will say, yeah, the problem is my wife or my husband is crazy. And I'll just look back at them and I'll say, well, crazy marries crazy. And I don't get many counseling appointments. And that's okay. But we know that you are happiest when your relationships are healthiest. Now, here's the other thing that I could guess, is that your worst decisions were rooted in your closest relationships. I know this personally. The dumbest things I have done in life were encouraged by the people around me. Your worst decisions were in some way rooted, whether they were led that direction, whether it was an idea someone had, or simply you said, I'm going to do this, and people said, yeah, you should. Your worst decisions were rooted in your closest relationships. So again, I'm not saying you should break up with your friends. I'm not saying you should say, hey, we can't be arm in arm anymore. Don't have that conversation. But this is what I want to do today, is I want to show you 3 things that I think you need to look for your closest relationships. And then I want to show you what we're doing as a church to help you in that, so you don't feel off alone on an island by yourself. So I want to show you 3 things that have to be in those people who are arm in arm with you, and then what we're doing as a church to encourage that. So here's the first one, is you need to stand arm in arm with people who are wise. You need to stand arm in arm with people who are wise. Now, a description of someone as wise is not a common thing anymore. And it's not because people aren't wise, it's just kind of dropped off our radar. We don't really seem to care that much anymore about wisdom. And that cannot be the case. I want to read you a story in 1 Kings chapter 12. And what we're going to read is the account of a guy by the name of Rehoboam. Now, to give you brief history, Rehoboam is the 4th king in Israel. So we have Saul, who did some incredible things, but ended up pretty bad. We have David, who was amazing. We have Solomon, who the nation absolutely flourished under him, except he had some disobedience to God. And then we have Rehoboam. And so I want to show you what happens as Rehoboam inherits this kingdom and the incredibly idiotic decision that he made early on in his kingship. So this is 1 Kings chapter 12, starting in verse 1. It says, Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape from King Solomon. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us, then we will be your loyal subjects. Rehoboam replied, give me 3 days to think this over, then come back for my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice? He asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, if you are willing to be a servant to these people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young advisors, of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. What is your advice, he asked them. How should I answer these people who want to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young men replied, this is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counsel of his younger advisors. He told the people, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. And if you go down just one verse, we have the result of that. This is verse 16. It says, when all Israel realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they responded, down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David. So the people of Israel returned home. That was the moment that started the splitting of the nation of Israel. Now, Rehoboam was armed with all the wisdom that he needed to make the right decision, but he didn't take it. And this is what happens. What we see within this story is something that we so commonly do. So imagine this. You have a big decision coming up. You have an important matter that you need to deal with. You have a relational problem that there's tension with that you need to in some way resolve or point in the right direction. What do? Do you seek out the wisest relationship expert you could find? Do you ask the advice of the expert, of someone who has been there countless times before and has wisdom that is gained from years of experience? No, at least not usually. What do? You ask your friend, right? In the most pivotal decisions in our lives, we take the advice and the counsel of those who are closest to us instead of simply those who are the wisest. And so here's my thought. I'm not saying that there's a problem with that. It makes sense that we would ask those who are closest to us because we trust them. My point is just this. Let's make sure the people who we are arm in arm with are wise. Let's make sure in advance that the counsel that we're going to get is good counsel. And so this is something that my wife and I has done. And so some of what we're talking about today has to do with groups. And when it comes to the small groups that we have been in, we have always made sure that there are people in our group who are older than us. Like, we want to make sure that that is absolutely the case. And the best groups that we have been in have a variety of different ages. It's not just people who are like us. And I've had some conversations with people, and they say, I want to hang out, I want to be friends with people who are in my exact same life stage or in the same spot in life, have been through the same things that I've been in. And I've just rejected that. And I've just thought, I don't want to get advice from someone who's in the same spot as I'm in, because they're not going to think anything differently than I think. And so if I have a bad idea or a bad thought or I'm heading in the wrong direction, they're going to see nothing wrong with it. And so I have purposely made sure that I want to surround myself with people who are in different ages and stages of life than myself, so I can gain that wisdom. Because I know I'm going to do exactly what every single one of us do. When I need advice, I'm going to the people who are my friends. And I want to make sure that those people who are my friends are going to give me the wisdom that I need in that moment. And I think every single one of us needs that. If you are middle-aged, you need people arm in arm who are younger than you and older than you. If you are older, you need to be arm in arm with people who are in the same stage of life as you and who are younger than you. If you're a young adult, you need some people who are arm in arm, who are young adults as well, and some people who are a couple steps removed from that spot. And that will give you don't know everything. But by doing that, that will give you the wisdom that you need. You will have access to it in the most important moments of your life. So you need to stand arm in arm with people who are wise. Second one is this. You need to stand arm in arm with people you can trust. Your Red Rover team needs to be filled with people you can trust. Now, this is what I don't mean. And this is part of it. I don't mean people who can keep a secret. You should have people who can keep a secret. But this is far more than someone who can simply hold a confidence. What I mean is you need people that you can trust that will guide you, will speak to you, and will act in a way that is best for you and not just easy for them. And there is a massive difference between those two. If you have a relationship of someone who is only willing to do what is easy instead of what is loving, that is not someone you can trust, because they are more worried about themselves than your well-being. In Proverbs 27:6, it says this. Love this verse. It says, wounds from a sincere friend are better than kisses from an enemy. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than kisses from an enemy. I want to say it like this. Some of the potentially most harmful, damaging, and brutal words that I have heard spoken about me have come from my friends. But here's the thing. They didn't hurt. They didn't really inflict damage upon me. I wasn't staying up at night tossing and turning and angry and kind of playing those conversations of well, if they say this, I'll tell them that, and I win every argument that takes place in my head. I'm sure you do as well. That's not what happened, because I knew they cared about me. I've had friends come to me. I've had one friend in particular say these kind of things to me, these specific moments, and I can remember the moments. You didn't handle that well. You came across as arrogant in that moment. You need to listen to other people better. You shouldn't yell at the umpire so much. I want to say that last one's a joke. Not so much a joke, okay? But like he said these things to my face, as blunt as that. And in the moment, like, I'll tell you, like, there's ego there. In the moment, there's part of me that wanted to go, you don't know what you're talking about. But because I knew he cared more about me than simply doing what was easy, I was able to take that advice. And so you need a Red Rover team that is full of people who you can trust. And here's the last one, is you need to stand arm in arm with people who are encouraging. You need to stand arm in arm with people who are encouraging. You don't need to point, okay? There's going to be a part of you that's going to want to look to your side, but I'm just going to say it as blunt as I can. There are people who give life, and there are people who suck the life out of you, right? You nod. You don't have to point. You can nod. Like, there are people, like, you get their caller ID, and you're not feeling, yes! You're feeling, oh. And you let it ring once, twice, and you think, what can I do? Can I let it? You have all these thoughts, amazing, between two rings, play out like, should I let it to go to voicemail? Oh, if there's a voicemail, I'm just going to have to respond and do that later, and then I'm going to have that like unlistened voicemail thing, and that's going to be hanging over my head, and then they're going to come to me and you're like, I called you, and you're going to be like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I had busy, and I'm going to have to fabricate a lie, and I shouldn't lie, especially when we're talking in church. And so, third ring, I'll just answer it. Hey, so good to hear from you, right? We have that. We need people who are on our Red Rover team who are encouraging. Now, I'll explain in just a minute what I mean fully by this. But in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, this is the Apostle Paul writing. He says this. He says, so encourage each other and build each other up just as you are already doing. Now, look at I find that verse amazing. Think of all the things the Bible doesn't talk about. Think of all the things Scripture doesn't answer. And Paul takes time to tell us to do something that we are already doing. Like, of all the things that it doesn't say, he says, oh, and you're doing this well, I just want to make sure you don't lose sight of it. Encourage each other and build each other up just as you are already doing. Now, what I mean is not simply say nice things. I don't simply mean affirm those around you, be positive, be cheery, all those are great things, but to encourage someone is far deeper than that. We see the prefix of this word, en, means to cause to be in. To cause to be in. So when we are saying encourage, what we are literally saying is to cause to be encouraged. And so when you are encouraging someone, you are putting them in a spot where they can have courage. Now, we just got out of a 5-week series on courage. And there's so many things that I saw throughout this. One of my favorite parts of the series is I got to have so many conversations with people who said, I'm now going to do this. And for some people, it was a big thing. For other people, it was a person. It would say, like, I realized from this that I need to have that. And that by having that conversation about courage, it caused people to take actions of courage. As I look at my own life, my greatest moments of courage have come on the heels of conversations with people who I trusted. I didn't just sit on my own and go, wow, I've been sitting on this for a long time. I just need to do it. No, it was someone spoke to me. Someone said something to me. I heard something that caused me to be encouraged. And so that's what you need. You need people in your life who are willing to call out what is best in you. Now, I saw this yesterday as I'm prepping for the message and scrolling through Twitter, okay? Because that's kind of how I go. Prep for the message. Oh, Twitter. There we go. Let's stay on Twitter. No, that's right. Message, prayer. More Twitter. So I'm scrolling through Twitter. And one of the things that I became aware of, which I was aware from stories in the news, but I started seeing pictures of all the things that were taking place in Charlottesville. Now, if you're unfamiliar, if you haven't watched the news, through a series of events, it led to a rally of white nationalists in the city of Charlottesville. And this is one of the more prominent pictures that we saw come up on the news and other things. And I just want to pause right here because I think it's important that we say this. As a church, as a denomination, as a local congregation, we denounce this. Like this is not who we are, okay? Yes. And I just want to be abundantly clear because I understand we all have our blind spots, we all have our errors, we all have our shortcomings, but there are many people who were doing that and quoting scripture and saying that God had called them to do that, and I just want to say no. Like, could I just be as clear and blunt as that? No, that has nothing to do with the God that we serve. But as these pictures were coming out, there was another picture that grabbed my attention, and it was a picture of the clergy in Charlottesville protesting this white nationalist rally. And this is what the picture of the clergy looked like. And so I'm sitting there on Saturday scrolling through the ways in which we need to be arm in arm with people with courage, and saw a picture of the pastors of the city, arm in arm, marching to denounce these movements and to say that's not what God is about. And I thought, man, that's it. That's what I want for you. I want you to have people who you can stand next to and around, who you can call out the best in them, and they can call out the best in you. That they will give you the advice, encouragement, and direction that you need, and not simply what you want to hear, because those are so different. Now, how do we do that? How do we form a Red Rover team? How do we find people who are wise, people who we can trust, people who will encourage us, who we can stand arm in arm with? It's kind of hard. Like, have you ever tried just to make a friend? It's a little awkward, is it not? You're like back in middle school trying to find someone to go to the dance with you. I know many of you at the time, we didn't dance. We kind of dance now, but that's another thing. And so like we have that, like it's difficult. It's just like, hey, buddy, Bill, would you be on my Red Rover team? I tell you what, he may stay in the conversation, but his feet are immediately gonna point away. I can promise you that. So how do we do that? It's kind of tricky because there's a couple things that we know need to be in place, and you know this as well, need to be in place, key ingredients to have those friendships that are arm in arm. The three ingredients are this. You need consistency. You need to meet with these people regularly over time. Now, if you've met consistently over time, we know we all have relationships of people who we maybe haven't seen in years, who we can pick back up with on the start. But those relationships don't form, don't grow if they're not consistent. The second thing is they need to be authentic. Like, you need someone who is really talking about who they are, not someone who's trying to impress, not someone who's putting on a good face, a good show. You need someone who's being authentic. And the third thing is you need some commonalities. Like, have you ever met a group of people and they're like a lovely group of people, but you just kind of feel like these are not my people? Like, they're awesome, they're wonderful, but we just don't have a ton of stuff in common. I am not a hunter. Like, there's nothing within me that wants to wake up early in the morning and go sit in the woods, to stare at the woods, to maybe shoot something if it walks past. Like, that is the antithesis of my personality. And so I have met some wonderful, loving, kind, mature Christian men who all they talk about is hunting. It's like, you are blessed by God, but I'm gonna go talk somewhere else because you are not my people. You're great people. You're just not my people, okay? And so you need those three things: consistency, authenticity, and commonalities. And what we have found is the best way for those relationships to form is through a small group. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what a small group is, it is simply this. It is 8 to 12 people, typically, who meet a couple times a month and have a shared conversation on faith. That's it. That's as simple as I can make it. So many of our small groups in the church, I think we have either 15 or 18 small groups. They meet at different times of the week. A lot of them meet Wednesday nights because there's kids programming Wednesday nights. Some of them have like in-depth studies. I know a couple groups that come together, they pray, and they talk about what's going on in life. That's what our small groups are. They meet a couple times a month, and they have a shared conversation on faith. And I believe that if you want those people in your life who are arm in arm, the best thing you could do is join a small group. Now, I want to explain this just really, really clearly. Because sometimes I feel, as a pastor, sometimes I feel like I'm selling something. You get that. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I gotta make sure everyone knows this is the best. And so I go through and like, join now, $19.99, no shipping and handling. Join your small group. And I didn't want it to feel like that this morning. So I just want to explain it like this. I'm not just talking about the importance of small groups. I am a believer, okay? I am someone who has been profoundly impacted by being in groups. And so my wife and I, we have been married 11 years. We have been in 7 different small groups during those 11 years. We've been in some small groups that were friends, like close friends. We all knew each other. I've been in some small groups where I knew one person other than my wife when we went in. Like, I didn't know anyone. It was complete strangers, and I want to know how this would go. And then this is what I really want to do, is I wanted to share with you some stories. I want to be like, and my group did this, and my group did that, and we had these moments. And as I was going through like the hundreds of stories that I could share about my small groups, I realized none of them would mean anything to you because they were my people. Like, you don't know these people. And so it doesn't mean anything to you for me to say like, hey, when this person's basement flooded, our whole small group went and they helped clean out their basement. And this person went through a hard time and we prayed for them. And they cried, and it meant everything. And this person prayed, and they never prayed before. And like, while they're praying, we're all sitting there, and we're going, like, we should have our eyes shut, and we should be focusing on the prayer, but we all have our eyes open. We're like, can you believe they're praying? This is amazing. And so like, I've just had this over and over again, but I can tell you this personally, like, the hardest moments of my life, we have called the people who were in our small groups, like over and over again. The most joyful moments of my life have come with the people who we were arm in arm with around us, because we understand this. Life, we are happiest when our relationships are healthiest. And so I just want to say this, like, I'm not just talking about something that you could do. Like, I believe in this. One of the first things we did when we moved to Beavercreek is we started a small group. And we didn't know anyone. Like, we knew a couple people from the church. And so we just went around to the couple people that we knew. And some people like introduced themselves. And we had this like really awkward thing like, hey, I'm so-and-so. It was like, hey, would you like to join our small group? Because we don't know anyone else. And I learned something really interesting as we were forming together our small group. So I asked Seth and Chelsea Cadle. Seth plays electric guitar in the band. I asked them if they would join our small group, and we were looking at getting a variety of ages and different people as part of our small group, and I had introduced them to a couple people who were about a decade older than us, and I leaned over to Seth and Chelsea, I said, hey, not everyone in our small group is older, there's some people who are younger like us. Seth and Chelsea are newly married. Seth and Chelsea don't have any kids. And I said, younger like us. And so they come to the first small group. They're the only people who don't have any kids. And they go on. And Seth talks to me. He goes, hey, you said like us. You know we're not. I was like, oh, yeah. I'm old. It's never happened to me before. There we go. But I do. I love our small group. And so this is my invitation to you this morning, is to sign up for a small group. And the easiest way for you to do that, if you're already following along on the gatherings, there's a button there in which you can follow that. Or you could go to the URL bcnazarene.org/connect. It will have you answer about 8 questions. It will take less than 60 seconds, and I want you to sign up for a small group. And this is why this is the absolute best time to do this, is right now, and let me explain a little bit of history as to how we got to this decision. So several months ago, I talked about a ministry that my wife had started that was called Starting Point. And what it did is it took people through the foundations of faith in a conversation environment. So instead of simply be curriculum, it was an opportunity for people to ask questions and just have a conversation about faith. And so we had talked about starting it in the fall. And then this is what happened, is we had a ton of people who were already in groups telling us they wanted to go through that. And they said, hey, I don't want to drop out of my group, but I really want to go through Starting Point. And so we just said this: what if we took every single group through Starting Point this fall? What if we, on Sunday morning, had the message series about Starting Point, and then every group that met throughout the week had an opportunity to have those conversations? So in 2 weeks, starting on August 27th, we're going to be starting a new 8-week series titled Starting Point. And we've already written the first 3 messages for this. And I just want to tell you, like, this is the kind of thing, I can't wait to have these conversations with my small group. I can't wait to get in there and hear different people's perspectives and backgrounds and how different things, I don't know, how they take them, their thoughts on them. I am so excited to be a part of this. And so if you have ever thought about joining a small group, this is the time to do it, because we are all starting at ground zero and having the same conversation. So this is what's going to happen from here. In approximately 30 seconds, I'm going to pray for us, and then I'm not going to dismiss us. I'm going to walk off the stage. Now, if you're already in a small group, you can get up and go. Have at it. If you're not, this is what I would like for you to do. I would like for you to sit there right now before you leave, before life gets crazy, and go ahead and go to that URL and fill out the couple questions and take an opportunity to sign up in a small group. So I will assume everyone who's sitting there is doing that and joining the small group. If you have more questions, you can go to the lobby. There are people who are right there with iPads and computers who can help answer any questions for you. The other thing you can do, I'll assume if you have your phone out, you're signing up for a small group, or you could pay your tithe. Take your pick. You can go either way with it. So, I understand this is going to be the most awkward end of a service we've ever had, but it's there for a reason. So, in just a second, I'm going to pray, and I want you to know, I want you not just to be more involved in the church. I think that's wonderful. I want you to find people who will encourage you, who you can trust, and who will give you the wisdom that you need. I want you to find people who you can stand arm in arm with, that when life gets difficult and when courage is needed, will call out the best in you. And that's what we want to do here as a church. So let's pray. Father, I thank you for the many, many people in my own life who have consistently pointed me in the right direction. For the wisdom that was given when I did not want it. And for the encouragement that was given when I desperately needed it. And so, Father, for every single person who is here, I pray that they find that. I ask that you would help us as a church, help place people, help have conversations and point people in the right direction. But most of all, Lord, I ask that, that this community, this faith community, would be a source of hope to everyone who is here. And at the end of the day, we would all be better, that we would be more courageous, and that we would be more like you because of our relationships with each other. So give us the courage, the space, and the wisdom to pursue exactly that. And I pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.